Capcom, a company synonymous with certified bangers. When mentioning this company, you'll often hear people tout the Titans, Resident Evil, Street Fighter, Mega Man, but one game you hear little mention of is a game so bizarre, so revolutionary, so beautiful. I have to spread awareness and bring love to this underappreciated series. This is Analyzing Viewtiful Joe. Henshin a Go-Go, baby. This is the kind of game that really doesn't have anything else like it out there. We're gonna start with the plot. Joe is out at a movie with his girlfriend Sylvia. Joe is a huge fan of old action superhero flicks like this one of Captain Blue. It's very similar to the likes of Power Rangers. Sylvia starts wanting some hanky-panky, to which Joe really just wants to watch the movie. All of a sudden, the bad guy, evil giant robot fighting Captain Blue in a mech reaches out and grabs Sylvia. Blue's mech grabs Joe, and they enter into the movie world. I really question why a character named Captain Blue has a red mech, but that's besides the point. Enter the first chapter of the game, Joe the Hero. Joe is dropped off somewhere random. He falls from a great height, but seems fine, so okay. Captain Blue confirms Joe is in the movie, and that Joe will become the hero in his place because he was defeated. I think this is supposed to be him talking down from heaven, but honestly, I'm not entirely sure. He drops a V-Watch down for Joe, which seems to be like a morpher from Power Rangers? But we'll get into that in a second. Now, let's get into the gameplay. This is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up. Your basic mechanics are you can punch with the Y button, kick with the X button, and jump with A. It works really well, and the combos flow together awesomely. You have to fight these robots that are evidently called Bianchis? Biancas. I don't know. I'm just going to put the text on screen. You can pronounce it however you want to. I'd say Bianchis, I guess. Anyways, there are a ton of them, and they constantly bombard you. They're relatively weak, though, so you can obviously punch and kick them. But also, this introduces another mechanic. Dodging. It's something that's actually really important to this game. Often before an enemy attacks, you'll see a little skull with bright colors around it. This is your cue where the enemy is going to attack, giving you the option to either do a small hop or to duck, respectively. If you dodge successfully, it'll stun your opponent, giving you a chance to counter. Now, just to highlight a few more things you're seeing here, we have 3 collectibles, basically. The V-Thumbs, you'll see these pop up everywhere. You'll notice you have a meter of energy up here, and you're going to ask yourself, what for? Well, we'll get to that. For now, just know that collecting 50 of these will extend this meter, so it's very helpful, and this meter is very important. You'll find out why in a second. We also have these giant pink cases, and although not the only way to get this next collectible, they seem to always be inside. You'll find these V-Coins. These can be used later to purchase upgrades for Joe to make him stronger. And who doesn't like getting stronger? Finally, these yellow cases have health, which you'll see that you have hearts at the top of the UI representing your health system, and the health you collect comes in the form of burgers. Awesome. Now let's move forward just a bit to encounter Captain Blue. He'll fight us to unlock our true power by yelling, Henshin! Let's talk about these models and characters really quick. Joe originally started off with a blue shirt and backwards facing cap, so you know he's serious. When he powers up, he gets a Power Rangers-esque costume in bright red with a large pink scarf. Joe himself as a character is a huge movie nerd and seems to enjoy the idea of being a hero. You'll notice his enthusiasm, and at his core, he seems to be a good guy. Captain Blue is an older guy with a righteous stash under that blue helmet. Obviously, he had bright blue armor and a red scarf. When fighting him, he often has electric-related attacks. Blue's a true hero of justice. Also, his belly sticks out a bit, which is hilarious. Sylvia is Joe's girlfriend. She's blonde, with glasses, and she knows what she wants, if you know what I mean. Following the battle with Blue, you'll see we've acquired a new ability, the ability to manipulate time. We can now go into slow motion. What's super cool is the game utilizes this in amazing ways. First, our attacks get stronger, emphasized by the pink glow around our punches and kicks. You'll also notice some enemies will have brief moments of invulnerability that can only be stopped by going into slow motion. Also, strategically using slow motion with a dodge allows you to get these super hits in on enemies that will send them flying. You can chain these together and rack up points. If you haven't noticed by now, the game constantly ranks and scores your performance based on combos, the amount of hits you took, and the time it took you to beat it. Beautiful is best, A is awesome, and then it goes down from there pretty obviously. We cap off this area by fighting a mini-boss who's like one of those robot dudes in a Zorro-like outfit and pops out of a slot machine. It sounds as bizarre as it looks. Because it is. Basically, he just spins and attacks us. He poses no trouble though for a pro gamer like myself. Then we can hit the slot machine to get some prizes. Some coins, the key to unlock the next area. And let's rewind for a second and appreciate the art style of this game. It's got this very comic book looking cell shading that's just beautiful and still holds up today. Follow that up with its use of bright, hyper-saturated colors, and you've got something so aesthetically pleasing to look at. Just look at Joe moving around in red with his large pink scarf. It's so cool looking, it's easy to get mesmerized by this. The world itself has a Ken Burns effect. For those who don't know what the Ken Burns effect is, it's basically cutting out 2D images, laying them out as a stack, and then making space between them. It gives like a pseudo 3D look. It honestly is not that different than what the 3DS had going on. Not to mention this whole first area is like a forest with ancient Greek architecture? Honestly, not sure what culture this is. It's a little bit of a bizarre mix of things. If someone knows, let me know in the comments. But it looks cool. Moving forward, we enter into a castle? Wait, okay, now I'm really confused. Like, we have European knight armor dropping axes on us? Okay, yes, somebody please let me know in the comments. What is this culture? What is this? Let me know. Oh well, not the point. We'll just slow-mo punch them away. Then we don't have to deal with it. I didn't mention it, but in this new form, we can also double jump. And going back to our energy meter, that's what's used up by our slow-mo. So you see why increasing it is helpful. If you deplete it completely, it will regenerate, but your armor turns off and you'll be extra vulnerable for a time. Also, a cool visual effect is when you're powered up, the screen is clean. But when you lose your armor, it gets like an old-timey film effect. It's just a nice touch that really adds to the aesthetic of the game. And also in slow-mo, you basically dodge anything. Just saying. So you can use that strategically as well. Now we can enter a library and we fight a cowboy robot. Yeah, a cowboy robot fight in a library. Look at this thing. He shoots at us, but we can actually go in slow-mo and punch the bullets back. You'll notice this is a trend with objects being shot at us. This is also a cool little thing that applies to every robot. As we beat them, they lose their armor pieces and get down to like a base skeleton, very reminiscent of the endoskeletons in FNAF. Pressing forward, you see more cool Ken Burns effects on a dining room table with lots of cups and entrees to look at. You'll notice we have a new enemy type, which are these green variants with helicopter blades. They're a little tricky to hit, but just get up in the air and go to town. Further into this area, you'll get a cool use of slow-mo by entering into it, causing this helicoptering platform to drop. This is what I mean by having creative uses of slow-mo. It's not only for combat, but also to help solve puzzles. As we progress through the castle a little more, I want to talk about the sound design. The music itself here is repetitive, but it's pretty great. It honestly fits with the characters, so it just melds into the background and doesn't particularly stand out. It's kind of a bizarre synth and bass combo. Every sound effect also melts in. You'll have attacking noises that when in slow-mo sound much heavier, and the general use of dropping octaves and speed does give off that vibe. Viewtiful Joe just manages to have this style with everything it implements. We get our first real boss. A mother-grabbing helicopter. Yeah, our first boss is a helicopter. I guess it's kind of a mini-boss, but still. I mean, I guess you could count that Zorro guy kind of as a mini-boss and the cowboy robot, but you know what? The helicopter's the coolest one, and this is the first real one. It'll shoot at us and charge at us, but as long as you manage your meter and time your attacks, you can reflect its bullets back and punch and kick it till it's destroyed. Then we can leave the first part of this chapter. Now we hit break time. Our chance to go get some snacks and hit up the upgrade menu. Here we spend our coins to get cool new attacks and some usable items like the boomerang, adding to Joe's arsenal and giving us cool combos. The next area introduces another cool slow-mo moment and some more enemy types, this time bats. They fly and are quick, but honestly not too much trouble. Also watch out for these barrels. The cool slow-mo thing that happens is with this water droplet. If you do nothing, it's just a normal drop, but if you get into slow-mo, it goes giant and falls on the switch and lets us go through a locked door. Then we get another trial and have to fight the captain. Once we beat him, we unlock Mach Speed, which is exactly what you think. It's the complete opposite of slow-mo, and we go super fast. We can go so fast we basically create after images that can also attack enemies, and we light on fire if our combo gets high enough. You can use Mach Speed and Slow-Mo in conjunction to further your abilities. You'll notice here we're in the cellar and basement area of the castle, and the music has changed to more of an eerie epic tune. It's still strong as synth, but also more mysterious. It's kind of like a horror movie now. We'll get these sequences of going down spiral staircases with giant barrels rolling to squish us, so we gotta go fast to get away. We'll hit this small section where we have to solve a puzzle by creatively using our abilities. We go into Mach Speed and trigger us on fire by getting a high combo, and then hit these lanterns. Then if we go to slow-mo, the fire builds. It's just kind of an awesome effect. Joe is starting the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. Okay, I'm done. Then we move on to the final section of this chapter where Joe goes through this cave-like area with really creepy illustrations in the background. I mean, yikes, what the heck are these? We see a coffin, and naturally, we gotta punch it. It opens up to reveal a swarm of bats, and then the swarm of bats reveals the Dark Fiend, Charles III. Is that his full name, or is that like his pronouns? Like, hi, my name is Charles III, and my pronoun is Dark Fiend. Like, okay, guy, whatever. He's less a vampire and more of a giant talking bat with pants. And whatever these are called, okay, I couldn't resist. I looked it up. I guess they're just called ruffles. I'm a little let down. I'm not going to lie, but the more you know. He does have a tail, which is super weird. But whatever, let's fight him. The boss battle proceeds as follows. Oh, wait, but before we get into that, I just want to say Joe gets a cool battle mode with his helmet, and it closes around his mouth. It doesn't do anything, but it looks really cool. Charles flies around and will occasionally go into this like drill mode and will drop stalactites from the cave ceiling, which we can then use to hit up to him, or we can just punch him. He also will occasionally shoot these like air blades, I guess. Not really clear what they are. They're really easy to dodge though. Then we hit him, he'll transform into a swarm of bats, and then we attack them until he's defeated. And boom, we win. Cue the excessive explosions and a dope narration for the story, just like a movie. This first chapter of the game is a great introduction to the potential and charm of Viewtiful Joe. Can you see why it's cool? It's gonna get even better. So rating this chapter, Joe the hero, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. It's perfect and has so many cool ideas in style, graphically, and musically. It's hard not to love it.
Where could Sylvia be? Is she safe? Is she even alive? Intolerable anxiety tears at Joe's heart. What did they do to her?
What would be a good hero name for me? I never thought this would be so hard.
Searching for Sylvia, Joe tries to track clues as to her whereabouts. Little did he know that the clues would only lead him to more problems. The next episode is Some Like It Red Hot.
Let's get it on!
You'll notice our scenery is completely different as Joe stylishly pops out of a manhole. We immediately get bombarded with enemies and, well, bombs, which we can punch back, of course. These are very prevalent in this level, and the boss, which we'll get to later. Let's start off with the scenery. We get a cityscape with a lot of buildings up close and even far away. The pseudo 3D effect of this level is really strong. You get streetlights up close, benches slightly further back, and then a layer of houses. Finally, the backdrop. It really makes this place feel massive, even though it isn't. I tried doing research on where this chapter's aesthetic could be based off of. I found nothing, but I did learn some other unrelated random fact that I'm going to say right now. Henshin in Japanese means transformation and is a trope where series in the tokusatsu genre, I probably didn't say that right, but that's okay, which is basically Power Rangers or Super Sentai if you're in Japan. They yell this phrase out when they power up and transform and put their costumes on. So it's kind of like a nod to that. I just thought that was cool. Back to what I was saying, I found nothing really other than a few clues. One, in the backdrop, you can see a large clock tower, which narrows it down a bit. Immediately you think of Big Ben. Our second clue is the street signs that are in English. And finally, the street lamps are very European. Therefore, I believe this to be based off London, so let's run with it for now. You'll see here the whole place is loaded with buildings, some even under construction. We've got manholes pumping sewage out everywhere. Blah. It's great. I bet they pride themselves on this town smelling like poo-poo garbage. Let's move on to the music. It's pretty boppin' and a variation of the synth bassy sounds we've heard before. this time adding a few gong-like crashing noises. It's catchy and it never seems to distract. Also, occasionally you hear some honking and car squealing noises, which really add to the ambiance. Now in this first part, we encounter Captain Blue for the last time! And we have our most difficult test yet. But once Blue's defeated, we can acquire our last power. Zoom. Flicking the C stick, or as I prefer as an alternative, pressing the B button, we can zoom in and out. This offers Joe some unique abilities. When zooming in, it makes enemies freeze in place. This allows you to lay the smack down either by punching in quick succession or doing a double rotating kick that hurts everyone in a 360 circle hitbox around you. More importantly, this allows you to do a drill-like spin jump to attack enemies in the air. And if you zoom out when in the air and zoom back in as you're falling, you'll do a slam into the ground and create a shockwave hurting nearby enemies. Use this in combination with your slow mobility and it's really effective. All these moves are great and assist in combat, plus make you look dope as heck, which is what Viewtiful Joe is all about. Now let's get into that sewer. The aesthetic of the sewer is a classic brick one, with lots of green nasty water flowing everywhere. Nothing too much of note other than you can get some cool uses of your powers. One by zooming in and kicking these two switches so you up their meters at the same time to open the door, and another where you connect the electric current from these cables by waiting for a spark and then going into slow-mo so it slowly builds. We get the return of Zorro and his slots again, but we'll take him out. This time his slots are super small, making us want to zoom in and slow down to trigger what we need. In the next area, I was greeted as something I didn't expect. A sign in the background that says, Netamuk. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. We're striking 0 out of 100 for pronunciations. So, Netamuk is a town in Australia. So, putting the pieces together, it all adds up. This is Australia. Progressing forward a bit, I want to point out an ad for something called Play Guys. It just made me laugh. It's here we encounter some new enemy types. These pink officer-like things, I guess. They have electric-based attacks, and we'll want to be careful to avoid them and make use of our new abilities to take these out fast. Probably the coolest part of this level has to be the use of this van. We ride the van, and it shoots flames out of its exhaust. By utilizing our slow-mo abilities, we can actually make the flames grow, propelling the van off a ramp and over these giant gaps. It's kind of awesome. Then we fight a helicopter and move on to the next area. I always love fighting helicopters. Pretty dope. The next area is inside a high-rise building. We start out in what appears to be like a lobby and have to progress through waves of enemies and doors. We encounter some crazy puzzles requiring us to use our zoom abilities to break through floors and ceilings, revealing new pathways to traverse. Also, random giant spike barrels for some reason. I don't know. You'll also often have these brief sections where we need to break a door or wall open using bombs that we ignite on fire and maneuver it in front of where we need, and enter slow-mo so the explosion is powerful enough to break the door. Going through all the different rooms in this place was pretty charming. You had a library, bedrooms, and even bathrooms. It was great. Then we ride an elevator to an upper level where we totally hear the voice of Joker from the Batman animated series, Kevin Michael Richardson. He's singing. Just take a listen. Okay, honestly, this is really creepy to me. And with the terrifying synth behind it, it's just, I don't know. There's something very, very disturbing about this little section, and I was stuck in it for a while because for some reason I kept missing the bomb. But whatever. When we move forward, we meet the character, Iron Ogre Hulk Davidson. He wonders who we are and how we know the place is called Movie Land. He also asks if we think ourselves as some kind of Mega Man. Fun reference to Capcom's big series. He's a dinosaur in a biker outfit. He has 3 horns and is definitely larger than us. He carries a giant axe, and he'll use it against us. He'll also charge at us with his horns like a bull. Not to mention occasionally a missile launcher shoots at us, but we can use this to our advantage and hit those back to him. This battle honestly is fairly challenging, and it took me a bit, but eventually I did overcome it. Reviewing this chapter of the game, I really enjoyed the aesthetic. The music was subtle, but continues the pace, and the boss was really cool. I really liked we got another ability. I honestly forgot there was more than slow-mo and Mach speed in the first game. I'm going to have to give this chapter an 8.5 out of 10. Now enjoy the tease for next week.
A man wears a scar as a medal. Not to say I couldn't win unhurt, of course.
Thus, Joe overcame the frightful power of Hulk Davidson. But on the blueprint that had fallen into his hands was outlined the most terrible of plans. The Shadow, seeking to stretch their evil power to the ocean itself, had planted a bomb in the underwater city of Mu. Already, water was starting to flood the city. Thousands of lives were at risk. Joe had no choice but to abandon the search for Sylvia and race to rescue the innocents of Mu.
Dang, this is horrible. I can't even read this junk. But more importantly, a superhero needs a super ride.
Joe boards his trusty Six machine and embarks on a mission to save the underwater city. Don't forget to see the next installment, 2 Million Leagues Under the Sea.
Let's get it on!
Picking up right where the last chapter ended, we're introduced to new gameplay. We're riding his sex machine. And in case you didn't hear me right, I said 6, like the number. Jeez! Get your mind out of the gutter! So the gameplay here is a side-scrolling shooter. We have laser shots and bombs we can drop. Let's not forget our powers are still able to be used. Going in slow-mo makes your shots and explosions stronger and bigger. And then you can zoom in and do the drill attack and rotate attack still. It's pretty dope. The Six machine itself looks pretty basic though. It's a red ship with some jets and cannons on the front. Nothing too special if I'm being honest. Maybe we'll see more later. Don't remember. We basically just fight aerial-based enemies here the entire time, and it can get a little crazy on screen at points. Like, honestly, the amount of enemies shown on screen at one time in this area is insane. As far as new enemies go, we do have these cool-looking hoverboard riders and these little flying fish things, and then it culminates into a fight with a jet. I don't personally think it's as cool as a helicopter, but it's still pretty cool. The music here is probably one of my favorite tracks so far. It gives me a Mad Persona vibe if you've played that series. I really dig it. It's got like synth and also electric organ. It's just awesome. The scenery is very simple, as you can see. It's the sky with lots of clouds. I don't know what to say other than that. It does have that cool 3D effect, but that's it. The whole way. That's it. Moving on. Now we're on the ground. Well, heading toward the ground, I guess. We start this area by falling, and somehow we're expected to grab all of these V-films, but it's really hard. Anyways, eventually we get underwater and we have to fight these guys that have football helmets, because that makes sense. We do get some enemies that have snorkels, though. And now that actually makes sense. Also, the new bane of my existence is here, these spinning electric robot thingies. As someone who uses the slow motion ability, it actually will power up their attack and cause trouble. I died constantly over and over and over from these guys. But I learned this, and now this brings us to a Jiggylookback pro gamer tip. Just get directly underneath these guys, zoom in, and jump up. Do your like drill attack thingy and it'll basically defeat them. Trust me, this is your best option. And this has been your Jiggylookback pro gamer tip. Back to the action, we've got to get past waves of enemies in this tunnel, just progressing to the right until we acquire the keycard so we can drain the water in this place. Then we have to go all the way back to the entrance. However, I realized you don't have to actually fight anybody and can just run, which is super convenient. And of course I'm going to do it. Even though they tease you with the 3 Musketeer rejects. Let's talk about this area quickly. It's very tech and futuristic looking and has giant windows showing like coral, I guess, behind us, warping and moving like it's underwater. While it looks different, this doesn't really feel very memorable to me personally, and it's not my favorite. Also, the music is basic synth beats. It's just nothing special. Back at the entrance, we can enter through the door we unlocked, and it's here we encounter the area's boss. We get that creepy music again, which just must be the boss area themes, but it's very unnerving and unsettling to me. I like it, but it is very creepy. The area we walk into is layered with platforms and actually is super detailed if you take a second to look at all the textures and modeling they did. It's really impressive. It's also cool to see submarines in the background, like this is a large docking bay for them. Then, the boss shows up. The aquatic terror, Grand Bruce. Grand Bruce? I don't know. He's a shark. He's got scuba gear for some reason. I mean, he's a shark, and sharks breathe underwater. Oh, maybe it's actually filled with water. Well, wait a minute. Sharks breathe through their gills, not their mouth. Okay, I'm done trying to explain this one. Never mind. His voice is really silly and definitely didn't fit, or at least it didn't match what I expected. I guess you kind of expect this large, deep, dramatic voice, but it was just, "Hey guys, look at me," kind of a thing. You know, it's just goofy. He comes across as really dumb, and he doesn't even know words for basic things. He also explains like the bad guy's plan, which is wild. Joe didn't even have to do anything or interrogate him or anything. He just got all the info. Joe calls him an idiot, and he gets mad, so they fight. I just want to briefly mention the music here too. It's a play on Jaws, which is actually pretty awesome. Despite this guy's stupidity, he is a formidable foe. He'll come at us with a variety of attacks, and at certain points will actually fill the place with water, and that just makes his attacks stronger. He'll come at us by shooting bombs, using a propeller to push us away, send piranha at us, and probably the worst one, charging at us to chew us up. It's very hard to avoid, and you'll be mashing buttons trying to get out of his mouth. I don't know if mashing buttons actually does anything, but it seemed like if I did nothing, I would just die. So, mashing away. This move is so hard to avoid though, like, no joke. He literally will just be like swimming and do a total like 90-degree turn right up to us, and he'll follow you. Like, it's relentless. You can, however, actually get him to bite his bombs that he sends out. Go into slow-mo, and that stuns him, and use that opportunity to get some serious punches in, and eventually you'll beat him. I also think it's really cool. There's a point where he like shoots out junk, and amongst that junk is a Nintendo GameCube. I wonder if it's like that in other versions. Probably not. Reviewing this chapter, it was my least favorite so far, but it still wasn't bad. I appreciate the change-up of gameplay with the sex machine at the beginning. Now, I'm going to give this area a 7 out of 10. Now, here's the yeast for next... Oh my gosh, my phone auto-corrected tease to yeast. I meant tease. Oh, what the heck. Whatever, just ignore that and enjoy the tease for next week.
You ought to watch your big mouth until you know you're gonna win. Although, in your case, the big mouth isn't exactly your fault.
Joe emerges triumphant after his first marine battle. The lives of the underwater residents have been saved. Suddenly, the submarine begins to move forward. Without a moment to spare, Joe leaps onto the submarine.
Hey, wait up! Oh, come on! I want to go too!
Will this trail eventually lead to Sylvia? Will the ship become the next Noah's Ark for Joe? Or will he become the next bait for Moby Dick? To find out, don't miss the next installment of Viewtiful Joe, The Viewtiful Escape.
Let's get it on!
We enter this crazy submarine with tons of gears, and it's a lot to take in. We're bombarded with enemies dressed like Donald Duck, and these big red missiles that have the hots for us bad. The music here is very intense right from the get-go to show we're in for it. Our goal is to manipulate this platform with a remote to keep it from being hit by missiles and to reach the end so we can ascend upward. It's easier said than done. Then once we get up, we'll have to break through a grate and enter this cool control center looking place, and we get a taste of a new enemy type, these big yellow guys. He has the steering wheel to this place, so he's gonna have to get punched till he gives it up. The trick here is to get behind him after he attacks, and then he gets confused and stunned for a little bit. And then we lay the smack down. Once defeated, we get to put the steering wheel in and can flip this place upside down. We have to progress through waves of enemies, including these ninja pilot-like guys, and move through the missile storage chambers that we have to time our running carefully. This place has some nifty puzzles with gates, but honestly I get sick of the floating coptering platformy things over and over and over. Eventually we'll make our way to the boss room, but before that, let's just take a look at this aesthetic. The level is very mechanical. I really appreciate its vibe, and it's done well. Even highlighting outside being a bright sunny day like at the entrance. The giant missiles that fly at us are super cool, but this place can honestly feel like a maze. It literally has maps placed around it to help you know where you're going. Not to mention you have to flip this place upside down and right side up a few times to get to every nook and cranny, which, me being a pro gamer, I have to accomplish. Overall, it's a cool level design, it's just pretty complicated. I find in games when they have a factory pipe-filled design, it's hard to know where you are due to everything kind of melding together and looking the same. There aren't a lot of noticeable markers to stick into your brain. All of these new enemy types flow really well together and match the aesthetic. I am truly sick of these rotating guard things that shoot electricity. They're annoying and they're everywhere. Now let's move on to that boss fight. We fall into a red room, so you know crap's about to go down. This is actually the first time we don't hear the creepy boss tune beforehand, which honestly I felt I was a little disappointed. I was waiting for it, but it never came. I actually thought it meant maybe I had more level to go through, but nope, this is the fight. The boss is unique, because it's us? It's Joe? What? Literally, it says, another Joe. Naturally, we fight. I find it weird Joe says whoever wins has to wear yellow. Does he expect not to win, or did he want to be yellow? Interesting. I think red looks pretty cool. This boss has a crazy amount of moves, and is the hardest one yet. He can multiply with after images that if they lock onto us can explode and do a ton of damage. He can call in the 6 machine to drop bombs and shoot at us, not to mention he's a decent fighter, although not as skilled as me. This fight you'll be constantly chasing after him as he prefers to attack with his after images, so it can be tedious and tricky. Also, not to mention the area we're in has a giant fan and random electrified floors under the platforms he likes to hang out on, which can be dangerous for us. Eventually we overcome him with the power of friendship and love, and he's toast. But not before he turns into this Dracula Devil Black version of us. And suddenly this sub is hit with missiles, and wouldn't you know it, we have to escape quick. So we'll be revisiting areas and trying to navigate our way out of here. It's very confusing and things are laid out almost sideways. I'd be very curious to know if this level literally is flipped or if they designed specific flipped variants. Like, is it all one piece that has different routes depending on how it's turned? That'd be impressively well thought out. We get a really cool segment here with a missile where we have to make it blast off and then we shoot off into the ocean, thus completing the level. This level is really fun and well thought out, although it was pretty tough in every way with enemies, finding where to go, and the boss. Definitely another ramp up in difficulty. But I thought it was great, so I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Here's the tease for next time.
Close contest with the mysterious opponent and his narrow escape of death from a sinking submarine has taught Joe a valuable lesson. But there are many more difficult trials that will present themselves to Joe. What hardships will he face, and does he have the strength to overcome? Will he find the hideout in time before the dark rituals take place? And who was the mysterious devil-like individual who appeared then disappeared like lightning? Find out in the next episode, The Midnight Thunderboy.
Well, I think we'll finally know who that mysterious figure was.
Let's get it on!
Joe starts off kissing his fist saying it's time to get to work, so let's do it. You'll notice it's a dark nighttime, slightly spooky variant of Chapter 2. The music is intense synthy bass. Look at the background. There are really pretty Christmas lights everywhere. What's cool is you can briefly see the very first chapter's garden. Does this mean everything is tightly connected here from the first chapter? I think it just might be. So the big thing here is as we progress, we have to fight mini-boss after mini-boss after mini-boss. This legitimately was the hardest chapter yet, and quite frankly, the hardest time I've had completing a level in a game in a long time. This isn't for the faint of heart. Only true warriors with fire in their souls can overcome this type of crap. So the first mini-boss we fight is a tank. Yep, we fight a mother-grabbing tank. It's very effective to hit its missiles back, and if you can counter enemies, use them as your own missiles. Let's stop for a second and appreciate how beautiful the giant moon is. Oh, and yeah, let's stop that jet that comes at us. I figured out if you hop on top of the jet and zoom in, just lay down punches and you'll do a ton of damage. Otherwise, you have to fight these ninja skiers that are difficult to dodge. What makes this especially hard is the fact that you only have the base meter of energy. But keep fighting and you'll get there eventually. Also, the lava looks cool, but I digress. Let's move on. So we have to get through a small puzzle with lava levels. Here we can go slow-mo to drop water droplets to create a stone platform, and then go fast to raise the lava and traverse over. This section is just so pretty to look at, but it's treacherous, so you'll need to be careful. Flames shooting out of the walls. See what I mean? It's just so treacherous. You'll reach an area with a slot machine mini-boss. Easy peasy to beat. Then you can make it spit out bombs and utilize the bombs to make the slot machine rocket out of the lava, out and up out of the sewer systems. It's here we have to push through waves of enemies and cannon shooting bombs to get to, yep, that's right, another jet. Good gravy, these take forever to beat. But utilize zoom punches, like I said, get on top for the most effective way to beat them. Then we progress to a tank battle, and following that, another freaking jet. That's right, back to back to back to back. That's why this level is so freaking hard. And if you lose completely, you have to start over from the beginning, which may have happened to me more than once. It's totally relentless. Be prepared to have to keep trying. At least the backdrop's really pretty. Honestly, I could live without fighting another jet in this game, though. Now we hop on a train, and that warns us it's out of control, and we have to get to the emergency brakes. And you guessed it, we have to fight our way through the train carts, loaded with lots of enemies and tight spaces. You have to find the key to each cart's exit hatch, and an enemy hangs onto it. And then you can move on to the next. Eventually you reach the end where you can drop the emergency brakes by standing on a button and go into slow-mo to stop the train. I always like those little touches of adding your powers to make things more effective. The aesthetic of the train in the background moving fast behind it's super cool, honestly. I love the details of the light swinging, but it does get pretty tight in there. And once the train reaches its destination, we jump out and embrace the return of creepy boss music. Epic. Only to be followed up by lightning and electricity surging and the Blade Master Alistair appearing, calling Joe his rival. He informs us of a ritual involving Sylvia, trying to leave Movie Land and go into the real world to take things over. A funny detail as he reads the Viewtiful Joe script for this chapter. I love it. This game is just so silly. Sylvia is revealed to have the DNA of the creator of Movie Land, and that's why they need her. He wants to test his strength against Joe, so naturally we fight. And honestly, he wasn't a really hard boss fight. He was harder when he actually looked like Joe, in my opinion. I found if you used the red hot kick move, you could light him on fire and deal massive damage. Even better if you can kick him into the lava. He'll go cool off in the fountain. He throws swords at you and will control these stone platforms with electricity. Just time your attacks and go for it, and you'll defeat this guy. He says he's impressed with your moves and asks what you're called. And this is where Joe comes up with the hero name. Viewtiful Joe.
Why, you're pretty strong. And that move, the one you did back there? Tell me, what do they call you?
Beautiful. Well, yeah, that works. I'm Joe. Viewtiful Joe.
Beautiful Joe. How fitting.
And Alistair disappears into electricity, thus completing the chapter. Now this chapter was hard as heck, and it is my least favorite chapter so far, even if the train and boss fight were cool, so I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. It was just too hard. Here's the tease for next time.
The warrior Alistair was dead. Joe felt that he had lost an old friend, and his heart was heavy with conflicting emotions. But Joe is unstoppable. He bravely hurls himself into the mystery of the Creator's DNA in order to save the lovely Sylvia. Thus, he faces the most agonizing battle any superhero could ever be forced to encounter.
Yikes! I completely forgot about Sylvia!
The grueling attacks of the evil forces know no end. Appearing before his battered body, the most imposing of the Shadows shows no mercy. Don't forget to catch Joe and Company next time in The Magnificent Five.
Is this it?
Let's get it on!
We start this chapter in a slightly familiar looking location, but at the same time, it looks a little different. Joe immediately senses something weird about this place. It's very purpley and misty. You'll notice there is purple water underneath, and if you sit too long in it, it'll hurt you, so best to avoid it. Traversing along these large rocks, snagging V-films along the way, we run into a familiar face. Charles III. This goofy vampire bat creature thing is back. You'll notice, though, he's green? Reminiscent of the converted to jade statue warriors of Kung Fu Panda 3. I'm probably the only creator that would make that reference. But that doesn't make it not true. Anyways, the music here is intense, synthy, bass, electronic sounding, which means guess what? We've got a fight just as intense, if not more than that. So lay the smackdown on this guy. He's not super challenging, just be sure to hit the stalactites back at him and slow down and punch when he charges at you, and you'll break through. Upon defeat, we're teleported to another area. More continuation of the strange, ancient-looking, I guess it kind of reminds me of like a Mayan temple sort of place. Clearly, I've never seen a Mayan temple, but I'm sure this is what they look like inside. It's here we encounter Hulk Davidson. And you guessed it, he's another Jade Warrior. We have to lay the smackdown. So once you get the pattern down, he isn't so hard, but I struggled for a while with him, and I don't remember struggling the first go around. It's here where I noticed the difficulty seemed to spike up again. Be sure to dodge his axe attacks and charge attacks and counter every chance you get, and you'll overcome this foul beast with your power. Next up, you guessed it, Grand Bruce, our Sharknado friend. If I hadn't said it, be sure you're collecting all the V-films so you can get a larger meter. You'll need it in the end, trust me. So same as before, but I actually found this boss fight really easy this time around. Make sure when he comes at you, you strategically stand behind one of his mines and make him chomp down. The first time I ever fought him, I had a difficult time, but honestly, this was the easiest of the 3 so far. Believe in yourself, fight the good fight, and your fire as a hero will overcome another Jade Warrior. Then of course we need to fight Alistair. I mean, the other Joe. Not the Alistair fight, but that time he was an alternate version of us. It was kind of annoying to fight with the clones, but just remember to do your zoom in spinny kicks and you'll show him what's up. His area here looked the most like I remember. Oh, and I should add, you should remember, lighting him on fire makes a huge difference. He's really weak to fire, so do your red hot kick as often as you can. And now this brings us to a cutscene where Joe is reunited with Sylvia. She's a little upset with him just showing off and not really chasing after her, which, that's fair. He does really enjoy this, but also it's not like he isn't going through all this trying to get to her. So anyways, Inferno Lord Fire Leo pops up, and he's the final boss of this chapter. And let me tell you, he's a piece of work. Let's look at his model real quick. He's basically a lion with a fire mane. He's red with gargantuan claws. He's got a very gladiatorial outfit going on, like ancient Rome. He honestly reminds me of Tiny the Tiger from Crash Bandicoot. The background here reflects the same idea, a gladiatorial coliseum. Be careful, there are openings on this platform and lava's underneath. Now prepare yourself for the most brutal and intense boss fight in the game so far. So here's the deal. He drops meteors and will shoot fireballs at you. Not to mention, charge. What you need to do is go into Mach speed, smack these meteors until you're fired up, and then go punch him. None of his fire attacks work on you while you're fired up, so you don't have to dodge fireballs. Once he's punched, you break through the fire armor, and he'll come after you. Dodge his attacks and punch him until his shield breaks. Then he'll do the fancy spinny attacking, but it's crazy fast, and he'll move between upward and downward attacks, so use slow-mo as best you can to assist in your dodging. Dodge enough and he'll get dizzy, then zoom in slow-mo punches to lay the smackdown. It's a rinse and repeat of this until he's defeated. He's very challenging and gets progressively faster, but you've been preparing since chapter 1. Let him have it, and never give up. Once you beat him, you think it's over and you go for the girl, but suddenly she's grabbed by a giant blue hand. Uh-oh! The one who grabbed her in the first place at the beginning of the game. The true bad. He wants to rule the world. We call him the Six Machine and fly after them. And that concludes this chapter. Honestly, it was pretty intense. I was a little disappointed there was no platforming or puzzles. In this one, it was just a straight boss rush chapter, which the last one was a boss rush chapter just with mini bosses. But it did challenge me, and it reskinned the enemies too to look a little different, so that was kind of cool. I'm going to give this chapter a 7 out of 10.
Let's get it on!
We're dropped into a starship with tons of enemies stacked out here. We start off with intense action as enemies pile on us. Our goal is to activate a few switches in the ground by slamming into them. The music here is pretty cool synth electronic with subtle electric guitar. It's got a cool space vibe, but it's still that Viewtiful Joe rock to it. It seems like a variation of the first tune way back in chapter 1. Looking at the aesthetic of the world, I love seeing the Rob the Robots in the background, an interesting crossover happening between Capcom and Nintendo. It's important to note that this was originally a title exclusively for GameCube until it was later released for other consoles. I wonder if this got taken out for the other versions. I'm assuming so. If you know what it was replaced with, or if it remained, let me know in the comments. But I'm sure it didn't remain. Progressing past the first room, we're welcomed with some sci-fi tank battles and a nice look into outer space with Jupiter, I think, in the background. I love that these tanks shoot out laser cannons rather than missiles like the other tanks. And it's cool how we're like in a giant tunnel that has pieces rotating. It's pretty to look at. As we move into the next room, we have to ascend upward, and as we do, we're greeted to robotic versions of the toughest boss in the game. But thankfully, he's not as strong. But we'll have to fight multiple of them. I actually really like the design of these. I think the blue flames and robot bodies make him look even cooler than he did before. Once we make it to the top, we progress again, and we emerge in a room where you can see all of the bot bodies in the background. We go for a nice ride in the slow-moving platform while fighting tons of enemies and lasers shooting at us. Oh, and flamethrowers, because why not? Also, these guys are armored like crazy. Some have spiked gloves and others jetpacks. Like, geez, they brought their A game. But thankfully, we brought our V game. Okay, that was pretty bad, I'm sorry. Fight our way through, and we get to a section with starships in the background that fire lasers at us. We have to hit these missiles being launched, and they fly at the ships in the background. I love the whole interacting with what's in the background thing. You just don't see that in a lot of games, and I think it's a really cool concept. Defeat these, and we're off on another platform ride until we get to the point we have to ascend through these segmented doors. Every time we progress, the doors close and the rooms start to fill with toxic gas. We'll need to defeat all enemies to stop it, open the door, and move on, or we slowly fade to purple. Once at the top, we get a cutscene and reunite with Sylvia! Only to reveal that the big bad in charge is Captain Blue? Oh, and apparently he's Sylvia's father, but more on that later. He reveals he created Movieland and is like us and got sucked into this world and got powers. Gives us a lesson about throwing things away or something. I don't know, I was half paying attention. He turns into a giant king monster guy and we gotta fight him Power Ranger style, and we summon the 6 machine and turn into a giant mech. Our battle is so visually dope. Literally giant and walking on the surface of a planet fighting this guy. I love how when you're walking, the planet rotates underneath us. This guy has tons of attacks. Once you get the rhythm, he isn't so hard though, honestly. Just avoid his lightning and get in zoom-in punches when you can. He'll try to hit you with missiles as well, but the lightning really is the tough part, as it hurts you pretty bad. I found a little trick that if I actually double jumped and went above the lightning, just through a series of punching and kicking, I kind of hovered in the air. It was really helpful. After a couple tries, I beat him, and then you get another final battle on foot, and it's just like all the other times we fought him, except he has full health. I appreciated that callback. It was cool. It was like it was training us since the beginning to fight this guy in the end. We beat him, and it explains his origins officially. He and Sylvia have a touching moment, and then Joe says he's got to go help with things, and Sylvia decides to go with him and transforms herself into a hero? Then we're greeted to the greatest reward a hero could ask for. An epic music video. Very grunge. Very early 2000s. I love it. Viewtiful Joe was a great experience and had a lot of cool ideas. That final chapter, I'm rating an 8.5 out of 10. And the game overall, I'm giving an 8 out of 10. It's a solid experience that if you've never played, you should just go for it. Well, that's all I have for you. I hope you'll like this video to help spread my content around, subscribe because you love me, and hit that noti bell to catch my future uploads. Until next time, Henshin a Go-Go, baby! Jiggylookback!